Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesdays with Tony. This is episode number 10, I believe. And I'm here with my good friend, special guest, Adam Mejaour.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here on episode 10.
And Adam, I've known Adam. I've known Eric French for many years, since 1999, but I started working at this company for him in 2011, and that was the same year Adam started.
Yeah, I think I came on board in 2010, so just a little bit before Vinny came on.
And Adam, I came on as a service rep, and Adam came on as a sort of a general. How old were you when you started?
I started when I was just about 17, going on 18, and started doing cleaning and learning some basic instrument prep stuff.
And Adam was always one of our finest prep guys. It still is. Well, now a real prep guy. So Adam now, after going to school at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, he now is working for David French Music full time, and he's our chief tech.
Yeah, one of the hats I wear. I manage the repair shop, and it's a lot of fun. It has to do a lot with music in the sense that I get to work with the instruments, but I'm not performing. The instruments don't talk back to you. There's nothing. It's a kind of a neat craft that goes hand in hand with performing. Yeah, it's a great craft. Yeah,
and Adam's also a fine trumpet player, and starting to get his feet wet in the business of shows, playing tons of shows. Right?
Yeah.
It's a great thing, playing shows.
It's awesome. I'm really fortunate to be doing it, and it's a lot of fun.
And so, so you grew up?
I'm originally from Millbury, a small little town right outside of Worcester. I got my start playing music in 4th grade. It was kind of neat because my dad, by day, was a civil engineer. Was always working out in the field or out on the highways or out on the road. But at night, he was a Middle Eastern musician. So he had a little chamber group. He played the nai, which is a set of bamboo flutes, and the doumbek, which is an aluminum drum, kind of like a smaller version of a djembe.
Okay.
Yeah, so he'd go out at night and he'd be playing gigs. So I got really accustomed to that kind of lifestyle of like, at night Dad comes home for dinner and then Dad goes out and plays music.
Right.
And so that kind of got me interested. So when 4th grade came around and we were looking into instruments, trumpet was something I was interested in, and he kind of thought it'd be a nice idea for me to take it up because you could kind of bend the pitch and get the quarter tones in between the half steps.
Oh, okay.
So I could kind of play along with him in like a pseudo harmonic minor.
Sure.
Little did I know at the time. Just got to play with my dad, and as I was toying away playing Star Wars and the little beginner band things.
Yeah, sure.
It was fun to watch him rehearse.
Yeah, and you studied, and you. Was Bill Fanning your first
Bill
teacher?
Fanning was my first teacher.
Yeah. So Bill Fanning, who we interviewed a few weeks ago, and fine musician, trumpet player. He taught here for a long time. When I first came here, I came here as a teacher. I think that was in 08 or 09. And Bill was always across the hallway, and we'd have a bunch of laughs between students.
Yeah, I had Bill for about 8 years, from 5th grade to senior year of high school. Yeah. I credit a lot to what I know, and I'm still discovering that I know, but I forgot. To Bill,
Yeah.
I remember my first lesson, it was 2003, and Eric walked me down to meet Bill, in his studio, and he was wearing a Boston Bruins sweatshirt and a pair of black sweatpants, and as I got to know him better and better, he was just a dude, regular guy, but he was totally killing at the trumpet. He was amazing.
He's the real deal. Let's get that guy. Yeah. So let's talk about college and your experience there.
Sure. So as I went through Millbury, I studied with Jim Rollins in the beginning, and then Dan Ferreira throughout junior high school and high school. It was a really small community. So we had maybe a 25-person concert band at the time. Really small program, but a lot of heart, a lot of kids that were dedicated to it. I was the only person going into music in my year. I really liked the trumpet, and I couldn't really find much else that I wanted to pursue beyond high school. So I chose UMass Amherst, and I actually went initially because of the marching band. I knew nothing about the program with the trumpet studio. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, except for I had seen George Parks at Band Day, and I'm like, oh, that would be a really cool thing to be a part of. And so I I got down there. And I remember my very first day I went to UMass, as a prospective college student, I went in and I saw Eric Berlin waiting for my audition. And he poked his head out the door, opens up the door and, "Who's my next victim? Buddy, what's your last name? Mejaour? Get in here."
He was auditioning the trumpet player.
He was auditioning the trumpet players on that day. It was right after my birthday, and man, little did I know that would flip my whole world upside down for the next 4 years. So studied music ed and trumpet performance with both him and Jeff Holmes. I got to know within my first year there. Took big band, chapel, and jazz 1, and then I studied privately with him for a couple of years before I left. And
he's quite a guy too.
Yeah, he's another amazing mind and trumpet player. Yeah.
So, let's see, what do we talk about next? Let's talk about repairs.
Sure.
So one thing that I wanted to talk about with Adam is, and this is a little selfish, is stuff that we come across on the road. On the road, we reps are always having instruments that don't play, and so there's just a few things that I want to talk about, and Adam can expound on them a bit. But let me start with them, and they're all simple things, and they're also things that only teachers should mess with, not students. Can you still see me with the key? All right, saxophone. So one of the biggest things, we get calls, my saxophone doesn't play, and I don't know what's going on, I can't get any notes out of my saxophone, and a lot of times what it is this octave key right here, this octave mechanism on the neck. The kids the students will put the neck on, and they'll grab this thing right here, this like yoke, and they'll press it down, and what will happen is it'll press up against this part of the octave key. I guess you'd call it the male part, and it keeps the key up. So it's leaking right here, and you'll get no sound out of the instruments. And it's such a simple fix. And the fix is, for the teacher only, you take the neck off, and you hold this part of the octave key so that the pad isn't moving and receding, and you just gently press on this like this. The metal will move. Any instrument. $10,000 instruments and $1,000 instruments. Correct?
Absolutely.
Stop me if I do it. And you can go too far, but if you go too far, you'll know that you go too far, because when you hold the octave key down and go from G to A, the octave key won't move up. Now this is moving well. I don't know if you can see that, but if it goes up, I guess that's like an eighth. I'd say that's an eighth is good.
Yeah, a little bit of play.
Yeah, and a little bit of play, because if you have if it's really tight here and you're playing straight on, when the student moves it like that, it can mess it up again. It can push it up. Okay, so that's that. The other thing that we see, there's tons of stuff, but the other thing that we see a lot is there's a hold down key. There's a hold down key for the G sharp. The G sharp's articulated, which means that when you can hold the G sharp down and press this F key, and it will close the G sharp as I'm holding that G sharp down with my left pinky. So the deal with that is if that screw is loose, what it's going to do is, even though the G sharp's not down, when you start to play the low notes, that G sharp's going to blow open, just a tad, and it's going to make the low notes hard to play. The way to check it is you play a low D, and then you hit the G sharp key as you're playing the low D. If you can hear a difference, if you hear like a hiss sound, or you'll feel a difference in the way it feels. Then what you want to do is you just take a little screwdriver and hit that key, the key that's on top of the G sharp. Can you see that?
Yep.
I'll point to it. It's right there. It's not this one. It's this one, that one right there. So if you go too far, it's not good. It'll open up. It'll keep this F key open. It's actually the F sharp key. So that's that. And that's all I'm going to talk about in the saxophone, because it's so many other things. But those things go, and they're such easy fixes. The other thing with the clarinet, what we see happen a lot of times on the clarinet is when the kids put the clarinet together like this, the proper way to do it is you hold down these keys. I mean, I guess you could call that the D key or the A key. You hold that down always, and that pushes this bridge key open, and then you sort of put it together and you line it up. What happens is a lot of times they'll wang that key, and the instrument won't play. The way to find out if there's a problem with that key is you turn the clarinet all the way to one side so the keys aren't hitting, and then now watch. I think this one is off. I think I picked one. So here's one. No, it settled in. It settled in. But what'll happen is it'll keep this top key on this bottom section open. How am I doing?
You're doing great. You can have this seat if you want. You can fix the instruments.
The other thing with the clarinet is they bend this E flat key. They bend this key right here. That's a first, like a B flat, E flat key. And they bend that, and it bends up into that key, and this key is open like that. And we'll get calls from teachers and or students. They'll say the clarinet's in play. We come in, and when that key's bent, we learned this from
only a Vincent Bach chord.
Yeah, there you go.
7C has to have a little wear on the mouthpiece shank.
There you go.
That's the good tool to use right there.
This trick came from Eric's dad, David French. And what you do is you just hold where the pad and the key meet the clarinet, and you stick the mouthpiece in here and just turn it just a little bit, and you'll get it right back to shape, and you're back.
You're back. You're somewhere.
You're somewhere. The other one is a little trickier, but we see it all the time, and that's when you play. When you play this note here. So, see now when you play this B, middle B, which is also the low E. I should be able to play that just with my pinky. Most students, and pros for that matter, play that with the C down. So with this key down, that's the C key. But there's a thing called a crow's foot under here, and if that crow's foot is out of adjustment, then when you play the clarinet with just the pinky, the C won't go down. And the way to fix it is you just hold a C and you just gently push on that crow's foot, real gently. You're just going to barely move it. Because if you move it too far, you'll throw it out of adjustment. So that's the clarinet.
Absolutely.
I don't want to take too much time.
Yeah, I have one other thing we can show them. And so basically, the art of repair, I think, as we as technicians get better and better at it, is just we've messed it up enough times. You figure out where is too far, and you find that happy medium, and you kind of bring that skill set as to know when to stop. Because keys, everything has memory, but all the metal has a finite amount of time before it actually just snaps off. And that's how we learned. We've broken one or two. No more than two.
Eric.
But the other big thing is you have your A and your A flat key, your throat tones.
I missed that one. That's
the
right.
nicest sounding notes on the clarinet. And so, as you're playing A, before it goes up to hit the A flat key itself, they work with each other. There should be a little bit of play. This one has a little bit of too much. But what happens is there's a screw that regulates the A flat to the A. And if that A key has no play before it hits the A flat, your A flat key is no longer closing over the tone hole. And as you can see, it's one of the first 4 pads on the instrument, first tone holes. Nothing else below it will play. So a lot of people, teachers and students, will get into a panic and they're like, nothing plays.
And just one little turn, it'll just fix it.
Half a turn, quarter of a turn.
And what happens is the pad, what will happen, and sometimes the pad that A pad will swell. From what it gets really wet, and it'll swell, and then when it does, if that adjustment's too tight,
you can always back off and loosen it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a great one, and it relieves a lot of stress, especially if it's during concert time or if it's right before a big audition or something. It's similar to the octave pad. Like you want to leave a little bit of play, because as the instrument moves, as pads, like Vinny said, swell in and out, you've got room to adjust so nothing goes out. So that's just another little handy trick you can use for the clarinet. There you go.
You don't want to take too much time.
No. Whatever we want to do.
But on the flute, what we see is we see this 1 and 1 B flat oftentimes will go out of adjustment, and that's just a small adjustment on a screw. The way you can find that is you go there. I wish I had this out of adjustment, but you'd play the B flat, and if it didn't feel right, you would with your left hand you'd push that B flat down, and what would happen is it would feel right. Then it would correct itself. I should have put this out of adjustment. But anyway, that's a 1 check. And then another thing that goes out a lot is this the 1 and 1, or even the F, right? F and F sharp. Those will go out because when I close that F sharp, it's closing. When I close this key here, which is I guess you call the D key, it's closing this F sharp as well. And a lot of times that'll go out of adjustment and that won't close. And again, the key is, I do it all the time, is then you with this baby finger, you'd play the F sharp and then press on this. And if you heard a difference, then you'd go after that screw with a small screwdriver. And you just turn it like not even, just touch it practically, right? Not even an eighth.
1/16 screwdriver, just a
16th
little bit of a turn.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that and the F and then I think that's it on the flute.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just a couple, before we slide on over, I had a couple other things. One thing with the alto, and then just show a couple examples of, how to better know when your instrument's it's time to bring it into the shop and get some service on it. So a big thing, you'll be playing the saxophone and take a listen to hear how the pads are sealing. You'll have all those pops all the way down to the bottom. Now, should you get all the way down, you get pop, 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 and then down here isn't doing anything. Take a look inside the bell, kind of like telescoping in. And I'm going to watch how that B and B flat pad close over the 2 tone holes, which you can see inside of the bell. Now, if you see the back of the pads hitting way before the front and you still see a bunch of light coming out of what would be the left side of the bell when you're looking into it, you know that bell got bent, which happens quite a lot. And a quick fix on the road, if you don't have a lot of time or it's right before a concert and you're looking for something to fix that on the spot, if you have a table with maybe a mouse pad or with some kind of padding on top, we just have silicone on the top, and it's actually hitting in the back, which would be the right side when you're looking in. What I'm going to do is with the neck in my right hand, lightly give that saxophone a turn and a tap on the table. I would go a little bit harder if it was actually out. Now if you look down it and you see it hitting in the front and there's light in the back or on the right side, you'd flip it around and in your left hand, you would go the other way.
Just light.
Same thing, a very light tap, and you can look right after you do one of them back in, and if you see them closing a little more center, that will get you to where you need to go for a quick fix. Kind of a neat thing for bent bells, which happens maybe in one in every 3 saxophones I see.
Is that cool. That many, huh?
That many, yeah. Sometimes it's pretty slight. So yeah.
So that's that. And then one more thing, and
sure.
For me at least, and I'm gonna use Adam's trumpet, but I'm not gonna hurt it.
It's okay if he breaks it up. I'll find another one.
So what we see a lot, besides valve guides, which is a whole other story, but we see a lot on the road is a student will come up or a teacher will come up and say, the second valve is like sticky and real sticky and like it's hitting, and what that almost always means is that this valve right here, some young lad or lady,
valve slide.
Yeah, it's a second valve slide, whacked into that valve slide. And we tell teachers to do this and not to worry. Again, students don't do this. And the fix for it works 80% of the time, is you put the trumpet down on the floor and you take your hand and with a good amount of force, you just press against that. I'm not going to press. You press against that valve, and what it does is it straightens out the casing, and all of a sudden you're back in business, right?
Yeah, and the biggest thing that's everything you're saying is correct. The biggest way to kind of know if you should go down that route is if they've hit it and the second valve is kind of getting stuck or not coming back up at all. You'll also see a dent on there or a big impression in the second valve.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. It could be slight depending on how thin the metal is and what kind of trumpet you're dealing with. But yeah, bringing it back down and then just a little bit, knowing where to stop is key. Go a little bit. If it feels better, that might buy you some time before you bring it into the shop.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Some tips and tricks for you.
Yeah, metal has memory. I've been hearing that all my life. But it does. It has. So a lot of times when you just have to be careful because you can go.
You can go too far and it will break or not work.
Yeah,
but you could go where you think is perfect and then you'll come back to it a minute later and it's actually gone halfway back to its resting point before. Yeah.
So that's what these guys do, like incredibly. You see these great techs and they just know exactly how much how to put. It's like all about feel and.
It takes as we've learned. I think we learned this at a conference a couple of years ago. You can do 80% of the work in 20% of the time. And the last, 20% of the work is going to take 80%. Right. It's going to take 10 times longer to do it. But yeah.
So okay. So that's that. I don't know if you want to say any more about repairs. I'd also like to have you.
We could go too far.
We could go too far. So let's talk about. Adam's a great trumpet teacher as well, and studied with some marvelous people. Has a lot of information that. I'm sure that we could all benefit from.
Absolutely.
Talk about that.
Sure.
About maybe your warm up or what you're seeing with whatever.
Absolutely. So to kind of give a little bit of context, I wear 3 different hats. I like to think of it as I'm not one thing, but I kind of morph in between 3. So I'm a repair tech, I'm a teacher, a private lessons teacher for trumpet, and then a professional trumpet player. For whatever scene I can play in. So when I'm teaching, a couple of great things that I learned right away was asking, no matter how young or old, what kind of sound that they hear. When they play the trumpet, what do they want to hear come out the other side? And it was something I wasn't really asked until college, or at least wasn't thinking about actively. And I remember one of my first lessons with Eric Berlin, and he asked me, if you close your eyes, what do you envision coming out of the bell of the trumpet, and in what space do you envision that sound resonating in? And I said red velvet for the texture and the feel and the color, and red, and then in Mechanics Hall was the best place I had thought I had played in at that time. So that's what we strove to sound like, was red velvet and Mechanics Hall.
Oh, cool.
So having a student have the idea of what they want to sound like, and then ultimately after that is just basically, long story short, getting them to understand where everything comes from, where the breath starts, where the actual compression happens in the body, and that the lips just act as basically your reed, like on a saxophone. And if you're putting a lot of pressure, Eric used to call it squishing the donut. Don't squish the donut, because you have an aperture and you have the lips that need to vibrate. If you have the compression coming from the right place and you're letting the air do the work for you, that sound's going to open way up. It kind of brings you from sounding like this, like how a lot of beginners sound when they first start, to really opens up and gets you that nice resonant sound.
So is the donut your lips or
the donut is that the donut is basically a kind of fun way of thinking about your whole embouchure.
Okay.
So the donut is there, and the donuts have holes in the middle. That's your aperture. So never squish that embouchure and aperture. In other words, yep. And so after that, we work on a lot of fundamentals. I always tell students and parents, like, if we move slower and I give less material to your son or daughter than they're used to getting or they've had in previous teachers or lessons, it's because I want to make sure they know what they're putting into the horn before we start actually putting that to music. So it's kind of neat. I think a lot of going slow and making sure everything is good will lead to a lot more success in the future, less frustration.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's basically what I think about, is chasing the sound, and it's what I actively am still thinking about today. Sound first, and everything else will follow.
The soul of the player.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So that's beautiful. Well, you know what I would like to do to end this is maybe have you play an etude for us.
Sure. So one thing I do, I start by just playing one note. I'll play a G for a little while. My G is my favorite note. And I think of it like starting the car. You start the engine, let it warm up. As soon as my lips literally feel warm and they're getting ready to resonate, I start to slur. I don't add articulations in until later, because I want to add one element of playing at a time so I can keep adding the next element while still playing correctly. So I just have an etude here that I play. I think it's out of the Chickowitz Flow Studies book. And I take away all the articulation. Actually, I think someone had already written this in from the last person who wrote the book, but they have big phrase markings over the whole the whole piece, which I can kind of show you. You see the big phrase markings right over the piece there. And what I'll do is I'll just go nice and slow, and I'll connect all my notes together. Spots where I need to take a breath will I stop the connection and begin it again.
Right. Yeah.
And so I might go in after that and articulate or really change. Do I want to do longs or slur to, tongue to? And I go from there. And just making sure you can feel, I think this was an old Bud Herseth saying from the Chicago Symphony, staying as fresh as you can be and feeling fresh all the way throughout your playing. Like a lot of guys will complain by the end of the night, they can't feel their face, it's really swollen, they can't play their high notes. But if you keep that connection in the air moving, it doesn't matter where you're playing. You're going to sound good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Man, well, that's great. That's sounding great. So you would add different articulations?
Absolutely. So there's like another half to this. So I might, after I do a couple of these, I want to always make sure I'm feeling warm, feeling fresh, feeling ready to go. The second half I might take and I might just start tonguing now. Go and trade. I'm playing just the repeated section. Then I might go back in, and now I might literally interpret the slurs and tongues as they are written. So on and so forth, and finish up the exercise. Then after I do that, I spend a lot of time, maybe 20, 25 minutes warming up. Then I go and I work on my piece. So right now I'm working on Chicago, the musical.
Oh, okay.
So I'll go in and study that. So if you saw the rubber band on my trumpet and you were wondering that the whole video,
oh yeah,
that's because the last part of the Chicago opening for the show, for those guys that know it, and as you're playing with the plunger, you're not thinking about your third valve slide and you're not touching it. That'll fall right down.
Oh yeah.
And I don't want to ruin some guy's musical 8 bars into it. So
there you go.
There's a rubber band on it.
All right, very good. Well, that's good.
Absolutely.
All right, well, at that,
I think we can call it.
I think we can call it episode 10. I think it was quite a marvelous
pleasure.
All right. So anyway, goodbye all. See you in a week or two. We may be going to every other week during the summertime.
Yeah, for the summer. And I think I had posted something on Facebook for anybody who might be watching. If you want to be a guest on Tuesdays with Tony, Tony loves to talk to new people. We're hanging out and just learning new things and sharing stories. So feel free to shoot us a message, or me personally, or David French Music. I'd love to have you. Or Tony Pinella, Vinny, we don't know who he is.
Well, actually, I really am.
Vinny Pinella is?
I think.
I don't know.
Anyway, we better go now.
It's a long story.
Yeah. All right, so bye-bye, everybody. God bless.
See ya.
See you later.